Hello, can you hear me? Can you hear me now? No? Okay, okay. Yeah, yeah. I think it was because I had it X just now. Okay, okay. That means I have to speak louder. Okay. Wait, wait. How did I do the capture again for the presentation? I just read from the slides. Oh, okay. I see it again. I see it now. Hello. Okay, okay. I see the slides already. Okay, okay. Thank you. Okay, okay. Thank you. Okay, bye. Thank you. Hey, slides are gone. Oh my god. I feel like a grandmother. Now I got to talk like this. I wonder. Yeah, I think I have to talk like this. Straight into the microphone. Alright. This is so exciting. Must be like that guy must be thinking like, !aiyo! This auntie really terrible. Oh, it's demonstration. Wait, 3 more minutes. Hi, good morning. It's already 10 o'clock. I'm not sure how many are actually watching this at this moment because I can't seem to see any comments whether anybody has logged on or not. However, the session starts at 10 o'clock, so I'll be talking straight away on providing emotional support for a suicidal person. I'm Dr. Kartini Abdul Jabbar. I'm the Outreach Director for Befrienders KL. So a little bit about the outline of what I'll be talking today is how the Befrienders provide emotional support for suicidal person. So before that, before telling you how to break the silence and end the stigma of suicide, I'd like to tell you a little bit about what mental health is and how suicide prevention is done over at the Befrienders. So prior to that, I'll talk a little bit about what the Befrienders KL is all about. So what is mental health? Mental health is defined as a state of well-being in which the individual realizes his or her abilities, can cope with normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make contribution to his or her community. That's based on the WHO definition in 2001. So what are the Befrienders Kuala Lumpur? Essentially, we are a suicide prevention center that provides emotional support to those who are feeling suicidal, distressed, and depressed. And our vision is to have a world in which fewer people feel the need to end their own lives. Our mission is to alleviate distress and risk of suicide, reduce the risk of suicide through emotional support and public education. So essentially, the services provided by the Befrienders KL are emotional support, public education, and we also have a support group for those who have for those who are affected by suicide. In the Befrienders in Malaysia, we have about 9 centers which all work independently and were started at different timelines. So for Befrienders Kuala Lumpur, we started in 1970, followed by Ipoh, Penang, Malacca, Johor Bahru, Seremban, Kota Kinabalu, Muar, and Kuching. And each center has a different way of operating. All of us would operate through phone lines, which we provide free emotional support. Some of us provide email or WhatsApp, and our service hours vary. For Befrienders KL, our service hours are 24 hours every day. There are 8 telcos who have committed to provide free hotline service to our phone line, which are Celcom, Digi, Maxis, TM, Time, U-Mobile, Weebly, and Yes. So for Befrienders KL, our total contacts in 2018 were 30,000, which is about 82 contacts per day, and our age range varies between the very young until the very old. But the bulk, however, goes to the adolescent age. And our gender, most of the time, we get more females than males calling for us. Our common issues would be mental health, family, relationships, social issues, job or loss of job, financial issues, or maybe a small proportion would call because we have some sort of illness, chronic illness. So the mental health problems based on the survey done by Malaysia, comparatively between 2015 and 1996, they found that now there are 30% of adults aged above 16 who suffer from some sort of mental illness, and they are high among females, young adults between the ages of 16 to 29, singles, widows, divorcees, other women putras, and low income. In a survey in 2017, the International Survey for Mental Health, they found that adolescents between the ages of 13 to 17, they found that 1 in 5 were depressed, 2 in 5 individuals were anxious, 1 in 10 were stressed. So these numbers have actually changed. The suicidal ideation and behavior from 2012 to 2017 have risen from 8% to 10%. So what do people who are suicidal think? They wake up wishing that they had died in their sleep. They hate themselves so much they can't look in the mirror. They feel that it's a cancer of the soul. Some of them would say that they feel tight in the chest, like someone has grabbed their heart and was holding on tightly. Or maybe they feel numb, they feel nothing at all, so they wonder if they're the only one who feels absolutely nothing at all. Physically and psychologically, they feel numb, they just feel that it's an empty space. And towards the end, they would also feel complete and utter hopelessness because they feel that no one can actually feel what they're going through, that they are the only ones going through this, and that no one can understand them. Depression and sadness are totally different. Depression is not sadness, it's not part of aging, it's not a sign of weakness or laziness, or a character flaw. And it can happen to anyone. It's a medical condition. It can be treated, and it needs to be treated. Since it affects severely the quality of life, ultimately it can lead to suicide. So the symptoms of depression would be by feelings or behavior or thoughts of physical, of which they might feel sad, unusual sadness. They would feel miserable, at least 2 weeks of feeling low. They can have guilt or self-blame, hopelessness, helplessness, emptiness, and worthlessness. From a behavioral point of view, they would lose interest, drive, or motivation in things that they used to like doing. They can have poor concentration, make mistakes or accidents. They can have anger and feel aggressive. They can neglect their personal care. They can be isolated or withdraw from society. And physically, they will feel fatigue, lack of energy, unexplained or aggravated aches and pains, slowed movement, speech, change in appetite, or sleeping pattern. So they might not eat as much, they will eat less, or they would have difficulty sleeping, such as insomnia. So their thoughts, they would feel that they're a failure, they're worthless, that everyone hates them, it's all their fault, that they're a burden to others, or that nothing good ever happens to them. So when they have gone through a low ebb of depression, they would start think about dying and have suicidal thoughts. So the nature of befriending is that we think about what kind of person would someone who's being low in mood would like to talk to. What kind of person would they want to talk to? And for us, how can we help them? And how would they like to be helped? So thinking back, how you would want to help someone who feels suicidal, think of the person that they would want to talk to. They would want to talk to someone who's warm and caring, non-judgmental, someone who can have acceptance of what they're doing, who feel empathy towards what they're going through. So apart from that, the person would take the conversations as confidential and trustworthy, a person who's trustworthy. These are the characteristics that would help in providing emotional support to a person who's feeling suicidal. So at the Befrienders KL, our charter is to be non-judgmental, and that all our calls are confidential and anonymous. This is one of the things that we feel that when people want to talk to, they would want to talk to someone whom they can trust. So people who are suicidal, how would they like to be helped? When they're calling, they're actually not asking for any advice. They actually want to be heard, to validate their feelings, to know that they are actually not the only one going through this. So how to help them? Allow them to express their emotions. Give them time to talk whatever they're going through, because sometimes it takes a lot of time for them to come up, to have the courage and to talk about whatever they're feeling. Suicide in Malaysia right now is still stigmatized, and there are cultural beliefs that affect people from talking about what they're feeling when it comes to suicide. So how do we provide help for them? Give them the emotional support for them to talk about what they're going through. And sometimes it's just enough to be there for them, to be with them, to listen to them. It's not a good idea to be giving false hope, telling them that everything's going to be okay, because sometimes we're not in their shoes, so we don't know what they are going through. Apart from that, by not giving any advice, we give them the empowerment to make decisions on their own. So over in the Befrienders KL, we have trained for body language, facial expression, and the tone and pace for the voice. Because all of this actually affects when callers call us or when people want to talk to us on how they want to express themselves. As friends and family, we would always be giving advice. But when we're providing emotional support to someone who is suicidal, giving advice actually prevents them from telling what they're going through, from venting out their feelings. At that point, they're going through an emotional roller coaster, and what they need to do is actually to let out whatever they're unhappy about, they're sad about, rather than being told what to do. Because sometimes the advice might not be good, the wrong advice can actually have serious consequences, and we are not actually there to be there with them throughout the whole journey to see what happens at every stage and at every step. Apart from that, giving advice actually creates dependency, and it deprives the opportunity for the people who are feeling suicidal to find their own answers. Over at our center, because by the time they call us, they would have actually have thought of or heard all the various advice from the people around them already. So for our case, we actually don't give any advice. So what would the warning signs of suicide intention be? Suicide prevention actually starts with recognizing the warning signs and taking them seriously. A person may look happy, but deep down inside, actually they have a lot of things troubling them. So when they actually reach out to call for help, every call for us is actually a serious call. So what do they feel and how do they express when they actually have going through all of these emotions? They would have a sense of hopelessness or helplessness. They feel that they are stuck in a vicious cycle, that they can't get out of this vicious cycle. So whatever situation that they feel that there's no other way out. They might have also any sort of mental disorders such as depression, and they have not been able to seek medical therapy, or they are prevented from seeking therapy, either socially or their own family members who prevent them from getting any help. So this escalates the suicide ideation, because they would have a mood disorder which brings them down further and they are not treated for it. They might also be isolated or withdraw from society because they feel that no one can understand what they're going through. So they don't talk to the people around them because they feel that the people around them might talk about them. So they feel that they wouldn't want to have it known over on a PA system about their lives, what's going on. So that's why one of the characteristics of someone who wants to provide emotional support would have to be someone who would keep it confidential and be a trustworthy person. Apart from that, from appearance-wise, they would actually start neglecting what they look like. They would have difficulty waking up. They would have difficulty keeping to a routine of cleaning themselves or keeping looking camped. They would look unkempt because they feel that they have nothing left to bother about themselves. Sometimes people with depression or having mood disorders might also have changes in their eating and sleeping patterns. So they might not be eating as much as they did before. They would rather starve. They will also might have difficulty sleeping, not being able to sleep overnight, might have insomnia. And all of this actually physically affects them because they can't function the next day. Apart from that, towards the end, they might be making final arrangements. So they might be writing out a bill on how they want to end their lives, or they have a plan on how they want to end their lives. They would have written a will to divide the things that they own. If they have a pet, they would find a person to take care of their pet, and everything would be ready so that they can just take the last step. There might be changes in behavior as well. If a person before this would be sociable, they would talk around with the people, they would start to withdraw. And if they have any substance abuse, that actually escalates the situation, because then they would not be mentally fit to be making their own decisions, and they would start thinking of negative thoughts and feelings. As they are unable to be physically well on a daily basis, they would start being absent from work or school. So these are actually signs of people who are actually going through a difficult time. They would also have loss of interest in things that they used to like to do. So if previously they liked reading or they liked playing games, they would have lost interest in all of this, and they would not know what they want to do next. So what are thoughts that goes on in their head? They feel that life is not worth living. They don't see light at the end of the tunnel. They wonder what's the use of going on. They feel that nothing matters anymore. And they feel that they hate to face each day because they don't feel motivated to do anything on a daily basis. And last but not least, they would feel that no one would miss them, because they feel that they're going through this issue alone, and that even if they have disappeared from the face of the earth, no one would even notice. So how do we support a suicidal person? We've already talked about the warning signs, and we can do a little bit of reading up. But the most important thing is that to offer a listening ear. We can start the talk by finding a calm and suitable place. But what do you say? And how do you say it? So over at Befrienders KL, we provide emotional support through active listening. We don't know what they're going through, but we can empathize with what they're feeling. And it's important to be non-judgmental and to accept any sort of background, because then at the end of the day, they need to express what they're going through, and we don't actually want to prevent them from feeling that they're hindered or they feel unaccepted and therefore can't talk about whatever they're going through. At that point, they're actually feeling that they're all alone. So that feeling of acceptance that what they're going through is okay, and it's okay to not be okay, is something that they might need to hear. The words of encouragement that we do is not to say that things are going to be okay after this. That's not what we would usually say. But the words of encouragement would be to ask them to talk further what they're going through, to encourage them to express themselves even more, because then that actually helps them to walk through and helps us to walk with them what they're going through. And usually what we do is that we would focus on the feelings and we would reflect on their situation. We don't do problem solving, which means that we don't focus on the problems that they're going through. We focus on how they're feeling about it and how they would be able to talk about their feelings. And we also paraphrase and reflect on what they're going through so that they would see the same situation from a different point of view. When we're not sure about what they're going through, we can ask questions to clarify their situation. So sometimes people would say something like, "It's been hard going through a lot this situation," and they would make a reference to a person. For us, it would be okay to clarify and ask who the person is, because if we jump to conclusions and we assume the roles of the people around them whom we don't know, they might feel that we are jumping to conclusions, that we are being judgmental, and we want to prevent people from climbing up when we want to provide emotional support. Sometimes people, when they talk about their problems, when they're suicidal, they want to talk about their problems. Sometimes they're not ready, and there could be long silences. Silences are okay because we allow time for them to think and be ready to build up the courage to talk about whatever they're feeling. And sometimes when they're really in that emotional roller coaster, at that point when they have so many things going through and they really feel that they want to take the last step, the mind can be very cluttered with a lot of issues ongoing at the same time, and we need to give them time to think one by one what hurts the most. So when we focus on the feelings, ultimately we go through each path of every issue of what's hurting them the most. And then we do ask the suicide question, whether they feel like ending their lives. But would that be dangerous to ask that question? Actually, studies have shown that by asking the suicide question, we are not actually giving any ideas or putting any ideas into people's minds that they are actually that they should commit suicide. For someone who is actually feeling suicidal, asking the suicide question is actually a good thing, because we want to validate their feelings and we want to validate what they're going through. So instead of doing any harm, you are actually doing a lot more good by asking the suicide question. But we don't go around asking the suicide question at the very beginning of the conversation. This question is only built up after a rapport has been built. This suicide question is only asked after a rapport has been built, because we need to walk with them through their situation before they are comfortable to actually admit what they're feeling towards suicide is. Sometimes they might talk about something that might appear trivial or unrelated, but deep down inside, there's actually something very burning which is actually prompting them to want to commit suicide. So we walk through with them through every situation that they have difficulties in, to let them talk about it, so that we know that ultimately when we ask the suicide question, sometimes they admit that they do have this tendency to have suicide ideation. And of course, for us, it's a suicide prevention center. That's why they would call us in the first place. And that's why for all calls, we treat them as serious calls. So if the suicide risk is high, they feel that they have access to something that can allow them to commit suicide. Say they have a razor or they have a knife. It's best to try to remove the means and to stay with them until that emotional roller coaster has been passed. We've passed by that emotional roller coaster. When people want to talk about suicide, at that point, actually, they're feeling ambivalent. They're not sure whether they want to go ahead and do it, or they want to step away from it. So this is the way that when we are providing emotional support to those who are feeling suicidal, it actually gives them the outlet to talk about what they're going through. And for this, it's not actually giving advice when we ask them to remove the means of whatever they can have to commit suicide. So for example, if they have a razor or a knife, it's okay to ask them to put it aside, put it far away, because we just want to reduce their suicide risk. But the most important thing is that throughout that whole period when they're having this roller coaster of emotions, we need to stay with them, because only after they've actually gone through an expression of all these feelings, or the feelings have burst out, they would feel calmer, and they would feel that everything has ebbed down, and that risk actually goes further down. They don't actually feel like they want to commit suicide. If we feel that we can't provide the help that they need, we would have to give them some sort of place where they can actually ask for further help. So there are many places where they can ask for professional help. There are counselors, clinical psychologists, psychiatrists. They can get a referral letter from the general practitioner or clinic kesihatan to go to the public hospital. There are walk-in screenings at the Mentari centers in Selayang, Sungai Buloh and Putrajaya. There are helplines such as the Befrienders. And for the Befrienders, there are 9 centers which provide call centers. So the main thing when wanting to provide emotional support to those who are feeling suicidal is not to judge them. Be non-judgmental. Don't interrupt whatever they want to say, because interrupting too often prevents them from talking about what they are going through. Avoid conveying any message that you are busy. Avoid brushing them away, because every call for help should be treated seriously. There's no need to argue or belittle their suicidal thoughts. Just let them talk through it. And don't dare him or her to commit suicide, because I think recently there was, within the last few years, there was a girl who asked on her social media whether she should commit suicide, and basically the poll said she should, and she really did. So this is not exactly what we need to do when we're providing emotional support. And never give false assurances that things are going to be okay, because if things don't become okay, they would fall into a deeper hole than they originally were in. And no matter what happens after that, never blame yourself, because at the end of the day, we are all individuals who make our own choices. So for Befrienders KL, usually we talk about whatever they're going through, and that's usually what people need when they're going through a rough patch in their life. And it's okay to not be okay, and people who are feeling suicidal actually need that validation. So when the world shuts you out, we stay open. So that's what the Befrienders KL is. It's open 24 hours. So being a friend who needs to provide emotional support to a suicidal person, you need to be open all the time too, but you need to make sure that it's at a point where you can handle. And if you can't, we've already talked about the many places that they can be referred to. Depression is actually treatable, and suicide is preventable. So last but not least, I'd like to inform you that the Befrienders KL, our call line is 24 hours. And we also have an email service, which is sam@befrienders.org.my. You can see whatever activities we have on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And I just wanted to tell you that our numbers have actually changed. It's 79562929. So that's actually the wrong number. So thank you very much. If there are anybody who wants to ask any questions, you can post it on the comments. Okay, since there's no one giving out any comments, I'll just end this session. Alright, thank you.